Have you ever been hurt so deeply that even their smile felt like an insult? They broke your trust, acted like nothing happened, and now you're the villain for remembering. Today, we're putting an end to that cycle, and reclaiming what they tried to take from you, your dignity. They crossed the line. They lied, twisted the truth, humiliated you, and now, they want to pretend it never happened. A friendly smile, small talk, casual like they did nothing wrong. And suddenly, you're the dramatic one just for remembering the pain they caused. But let's make one thing clear, actions have consequences. And some people, they urgently need to learn that lesson. We live in a world where too many people expect automatic forgiveness, like it's a gift they're entitled to, even when they've done nothing to earn it. They betray you, toss out a weak apology, and wait for you to clean up the mess. Again. But not this time. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 brutally honest reasons why some people absolutely deserve to face the consequences of their behavior, and why holding them accountable isn't harsh, it's healthy. Because when you stop allowing people to walk all over your boundaries, you're not being mean, you're finally protecting yourself. And in doing that, you send a loud, clear message: this cycle ends here. So, if you've ever felt guilty for cutting someone off, if you've ever questioned your right to feel angry, if you've ever kept silent, swallowing your instincts just to keep the peace, this, right here, is your wake-up call. Smash that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear will give you the clarity, the strength, and the permission to stop explaining, stop excusing, and start reclaiming your power. Let's begin with reason 1. They weren't sorry. They were just sorry they got caught. People say forgiveness sets a prisoner free. And in the end, you realize the prisoner was you. But here's what they don't tell you. If the other person learns nothing, the door locks behind you, and you become their prisoner all over again. We live in a culture that glorifies forgive and forget. Scroll through social media and you'll see it plastered everywhere: be the bigger person. Let it go. Don't hold grudges. Sure, those quotes might sound noble, even wise, but there's a hidden agenda behind them. They're often used to guilt people, especially those who are kind, compassionate, and emotionally mature, into tolerating what never should have been tolerated. Into becoming endlessly patient with those who repeatedly cross the line. But here's the truth. There's a massive difference between forgiving someone and letting them off the hook completely. And that's what we're going to uncover next, in reason 2. Let's pick up where we left off. Forgiveness may come from within, but consequences must come from the outside. You see, forgiveness is personal. It's something you do for your peace, your healing. But consequences? Those are earned. They belong to the person who crossed the line. Whether someone betrayed you, disrespected you, or violated your boundaries, if they walk away untouched, the message they receive is chillingly simple. That worked. I'll just do it again. Because people, especially the selfish, the manipulative, or the emotionally immature, don't change based on apologies. They change based on outcomes. Just like a child who touches a hot stove and learns not to do it again, adults learn through the consequences of their actions. And if bad behavior brings them exactly what they want, no resistance, no reaction, no pushback, why would they stop? They're not always evil masterminds. Sometimes, they're just opportunists. They repeat what works. That's human psychology. But here's where it gets dangerous. When you forgive someone, and they take that as permission to come back, no reflection, no growth, no responsibility, that's not healing. That's self-erasure. That's handing your dignity over like it's disposable. This silent suffering is especially common among older individuals. With age often comes not only wisdom, but softness, empathy, the desire to avoid conflict. Parents forgive grown children for cruel outbursts. Old friends excuse backhanded comments with, "That's just how he is." Spouses endure betrayal in silence, all in the name of keeping the peace. But here's the truth. While you suffer quietly, the violator gets exactly what they wanted: continued access to your energy, your trust, your peace of mind. No challenge. No correction. No consequence. So what can we do? Here, Stoic philosophy gives us clarity. The Stoics taught that we cannot control the actions of others, only our response to them. But remember, that response does not have to be passive. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And part of that strength is saying no more. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. But out of self-respect. Forgiving someone within your heart is noble. But allowing them to keep harming you without consequence, that's a betrayal of your own soul. Here's the key insight. Accountability is not cruelty. It's truth. It's reality. It's not revenge, it's simply holding up a mirror. If someone lies to you, the natural consequence is that you stop trusting them. If someone disrespects your boundaries, the natural result is distance, not drama. Just space. You don't need to scream. You just need to step back. And that brings us to the next truth you must understand, because reason 3 will expose the most manipulative tactic of all. Let's keep this clear: you don't need a dramatic confrontation to reclaim your power. You don't need to yell, argue, or even explain. You simply let their actions write the new rules of the relationship. Quietly. Firmly. Without fanfare. This approach isn't just for your protection, it's their opportunity to grow, too. Because if they are capable of growth, they'll understand that real healing demands accountability. A person who's genuinely remorseful won't rush your forgiveness or pretend nothing ever happened. They'll sit with the weight of their choices. They'll accept the discomfort of your silence. Your boundaries. Your distance. And that discomfort, that becomes their greatest teacher. But if they don't learn, if instead they try to guilt you, gaslight you, or twist your boundary into a new offense, then you've just received the clearest message possible. They were never truly sorry. They were only sorry they got caught. So next time someone tells you to forgive and forget, remember, forgetting is optional. Forgiveness can be silent, even private. But consequences must be visible. They must be earned. And when someone keeps revealing who they truly are, it is not your job to unsee it. It's your responsibility to protect yourself from it. Which brings us to reason 2. Patterns of disrespect are not random. They're deliberate. Now, I want you to pause and really think. Is there someone in your life who's hurt you not once, not twice, but repeatedly? Not a one-time mistake. Not a moment of stress. But a consistent pattern that keeps showing up. Maybe it's a sibling who always finds that subtle way to twist the knife, never loud, never explosive, just sharp enough to leave a sting, every time. Maybe it's your grown child, the one who only calls when they need something, but somehow disappears the moment you need support. Or maybe it's that old friend. The one who fades away during your struggles, but magically reappears when life is going well, just in time to bask in the light and claim they were always there. There's a moment, and if you've lived long enough, you've felt it, when something shifts inside. You stop making excuses. You stop calling it a misunderstanding. And you suddenly realize. These aren't mistakes. They're patterns. And patterns are made of choices, not accidents. It's like standing in the rain for years, only to look up and realize. It wasn't the weather. It was someone standing above you with a watering can, smirking, while pretending to care. Let me share a story. There was a woman I once knew. Let's call her Evelyn. After retiring early to care for her ill husband, she lost him. And with him, her daily sense of purpose. She felt lonelier than she ever imagined. That's when one of her daughters started calling more. Visiting sometimes. Helping with small errands. To Evelyn, it felt like a blessing. She'd proudly tell neighbors, "She's really showing up for me now." But slowly, the warmth turned transactional. The daughter began hinting at her own financial stress. How hard life was. How much she was giving up to be there. Evelyn, overwhelmed by both gratitude and guilt, started paying small bills. Then came little loans. Then, credit cards. And whenever Evelyn hesitated, her daughter would vanish. Days would go by. Until she returned with apologies and excuses, saying she was just overwhelmed. The cycle repeated. Again and again. And Evelyn, like so many in her shoes, didn't see what was happening. Didn't see the pattern. But we must. Because cycles of disrespect like this, they are rarely random. And recognizing the pattern is the first step to breaking it. This kind of behavior, it follows a predictable pattern. First, there's the boundary violation, a lie, a manipulation, a flash of emotional cruelty. Then, like clockwork, comes the minimization. It wasn't that bad. You're overreacting. Can't you take a joke? Next comes the charm offensive. A bouquet of flowers. A thoughtful call. A kind gesture. Just enough warmth to make you doubt your instincts and lower your guard. But then, it returns. The disrespect creeps back in. The kindness fades. And the cycle begins again, colder, quieter, more calculated than before. This isn't random. It's a pattern, one that both ancient Stoics and modern psychologists agree on. People who benefit from crossing your boundaries don't usually stop, unless something forces them to. Why would they change? The system works perfectly for them. They get what they want, without consequences. And for kind, loyal people like Evelyn, people terrified of conflict, those consequences never arrive. So the damage grows, silently. But there is a way to start breaking this cycle. And it begins with one powerful tool, documentation. Not for revenge. Not to catch them in the act. But for clarity. Because here's the truth. The human mind forgets, especially when emotional manipulation clouds your memory. That's why keeping a simple journal can become your greatest ally. Just write it down. The date. The time. What happened? What was said? How it made you feel? At first, it might feel silly. But over time, it becomes a mirror, one that doesn't lie. That's what happened with Evelyn. Once she started documenting each interaction, the fog began to lift. She saw the pattern. Broken promises. Sudden kindnesses that always coincided with financial needs. Apologies that vanished as soon as the next favor was fulfilled. It wasn't confusion anymore, it was a structure. And once you see the structure, you can step outside of it. But even more important than writing things down, is learning to trust yourself again. You know that quiet voice inside you? The one that tightens your chest when a conversation feels off. The one that leaves you drained after someone exits the room. That voice is not paranoia. It's intuition. It's wisdom that's grown with you. It's self-preservation, and it's time you started listening. The Stoic said suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from our refusal to accept reality. When we deny the truth of someone's consistent disrespect, we extend our pain. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone shows me I am wrong, I will change gladly. I seek the truth, by which no one was ever harmed." But let's be clear, it's not your job to change someone. It's your job to accept the truth, and act accordingly. So if someone keeps hurting you, if their mistakes start to look like strategies, stop waiting for another apology. Start preparing your next boundary. They don't need another chance to prove who they are. You need the courage to believe them the first time, and protect yourself like your peace depends on it, because it does. And that leads us to reason 3. Boundaries protect your self-worth. Did you know that your brain physically rewires itself based on repeated emotional experiences, even the ones that hurt you? It's called neuroplasticity. And it means that every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries without consequence, your mind begins to accept that behavior as normal. Let's talk about how to reclaim control and restore your sense of worth. And here's the terrifying truth. When you let people cross your boundaries without consequence, it's not just the relationship that suffers, it's your sense of self. Most people don't realize this until it's almost too late. Each time you allow someone to mistreat you without standing up for yourself, you're doing more than giving them control over a moment. You're reshaping how you see yourself. Every time you stay silent when something cuts deep. Every time you explain away their behavior with a soft, "they didn't mean it." Every time you suppress your discomfort to avoid tension. You're sending a message. Not to them, to yourself. A message that whispers, "My feelings don't matter. My dignity isn't important. My peace is worth less than their comfort." That message doesn't shout. It seeps. Like a slow-acting poison, it slips into every part of your life. You begin accepting treatment that the younger version of you would have run from. You start confusing pain with passion. Chaos with love. You tell yourself maybe this is what relationships look like. Maybe, this is all you're worth. But it's not. And the antidote is consequences. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect in action. It's not about punishing others. It's about reclaiming control over your emotional world. When you calmly say, "If you speak to me that way again, I will end the conversation," that's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's you saying, "My peace is not up for debate. My self-respect is non-negotiable." So what does this look like in real life? Healthy boundaries are clear, direct, and unapologetic. They sound like, "I won't accept being spoken to like that. If it happens again, I'll leave the conversation. If you keep showing up late without notice, I'll stop including you in plans." These aren't threats. They're not ultimatums. They are facts, simple, grounded truths about what you will and will not accept, and what happens if that line is crossed. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. What if they get angry? What if I lose the relationship? Those fears are real. They're human. But here's the hard truth you need to hear. Anyone who reacts with rage to your healthy, respectful boundaries never respected you in the first place. Their anger. It's not about you changing, it's about them losing control. And yes, in some cases, that relationship may not survive. But you have to ask yourself, what kind of relationship is it, if it only survives at the cost of your well-being? The more dangerous response isn't loud anger. It's the subtle emotional manipulation that makes you feel guilty for honoring your limits. In the next section, we'll break down how to spot these manipulative tactics, and how to stand your ground without losing yourself. They might cry. They might guilt-trip you. They might say, "You've changed," or promise they'll do anything, just to get you to drop your guard. But this is where your strength matters most. Because boundaries that collapse under pressure, they're not really boundaries. They're invitations. Invitations for the same pain to find its way back in. Before we move on to reason 4, I want to pause and say something important, something just for you. If you're still watching this, if your chest feels tight, if your heart is pounding a little harder, if something inside you is starting to shift, even if it's uncomfortable, then you're exactly where you need to be. You're waking up. And waking up is rarely easy. But it's always, always worth it. Now let's move forward. Reason 4, enabling is not compassion. You've heard this phrase before, but let's make it real. What you allow is what will continue. This truth should be written on every mirror. Especially for those of us who confuse enabling with love. It's one of the hardest things to admit. That sometimes the pain we feel in a relationship isn't just caused by the other person. It's caused by what we keep allowing, over and over again. Let's break something open here, something uncomfortable, but necessary. There is a cycle, a destructive one, that so many people are trapped in. And it's called emotional enablement. What makes it so dangerous? It's not just what it does to you. It's what it does to them. You think you're helping. You tell yourself, this is love. This is empathy. But in reality, you're shielding them from the natural consequences of their behavior. And when people are protected from consequences, they don't change. They repeat. Imagine this. Someone you care about is slowly poisoning themselves, day by day. Instead of confronting the source, you quietly clean the mess. You hide the symptoms. You hope things will just get better. But they don't. Because healing doesn't happen in silence. And growth doesn't happen without friction. That's what emotional enablement looks like. It's love tangled with fear. It's empathy twisted into avoidance. It's being kind, at the cost of being honest. Here's the brutal truth. When someone hurts you and you forgive them without requiring any change, you're not giving them a second chance. You're giving them relief, not responsibility. And that relief? It becomes a permission slip, one they'll keep using to hurt you again. Soon, you both fall into a rhythm of dysfunction. They cross a boundary. They apologize. You forgive. And repeat. Your hope becomes the trap. You hope they'll change. You hope they'll finally get it. But without accountability, hope turns into helplessness. The tragedy is this. Most enablers aren't weak. They're some of the strongest people in the room. They carry everything. They endure silently. But endurance without boundaries isn't strength. It's self-erasure. You keep explaining. You keep justifying. You keep swallowing your needs just to protect their potential. But potential? It means nothing without accountability. So let me ask you this. What if consequences are one of the most loving things you can offer? What if holding someone accountable isn't punishment, but a mirror? A mirror that forces them, maybe for the first time, to stop and ask, what am I actually doing? Because true compassion, it's not about shielding someone from the truth. It's about honoring your truth, and that's exactly where we're headed next. Real love doesn't avoid the truth. It offers space for growth, and that space is created through consequences, not cruelty. This isn't about revenge. It's not about trying to make someone feel the pain they caused you. That's punishment, and punishment comes from hurt, from a desire to retaliate. But consequences? They're neutral. They're not about making someone suffer, they're simply the natural outcome of choices. If someone lies to you, you stop believing them. If they repeatedly disrespect your time, you stop prioritizing them. If they cross your boundaries over and over again, you limit access to your life. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But out of clarity. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is this. Remove the emotion from your consequences. Don't lash out. Don't explode with, "You're so selfish, I'm done with you." Instead, respond with calm, grounded truth. When this happens, it makes me feel disrespected. If it continues, I won't be able to stay in this dynamic. One response attacks the person. The other reveals the impact of the behavior. One creates escalation. The other creates space for reflection, and for real change, if they're willing to rise to it. That is what love really looks like. It's not about being endlessly soft, sentimental, or overfunctioning. It's not about sacrificing yourself to preserve someone else's comfort. Love, in its strongest form, is boundaries. It's clarity. It's standing face to face with someone and saying, I care about you, but I care about me too. And if I have to choose between protecting your comfort or protecting my peace, I choose me. And when that happens, when you make that choice, expect the resistance. They might cry. They might beg. They might promise, again, that this time they'll be better. But listen closely, that's not your cue to bend. That's your confirmation that your boundary is working. Because here's the truth. People who are invested in control always panic when that control begins to slip. So ask yourself, honestly, bravely. If nothing about this person ever changes, what needs to happen so I can be at peace? Whatever answer comes up, that's your truth. Let it lead you. Because enabling isn't compassion. It's slow-motion abandonment. Of them, and of yourself. Real compassion has the courage to say, no more. And sometimes, that's the one thing that sets both of you free. Reason 5, reclaiming power and finding peace. Take a moment, not later. Right now. Think back to a time when someone repeatedly crossed your boundaries. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't rationalize it. Feel it. Remember how your body responded. The tension in your chest that just wouldn't release. The sick knot in your stomach. The heaviness in your shoulders, like you were quietly carrying someone else's shame, someone else's responsibility. That wasn't just stress. That was your nervous system sounding the alarm. A deep, internal warning. Your dignity was being dismantled. And some part of you knew, but didn't act. Not because you were weak. But because you didn't yet believe that you were allowed to protect your peace. I want to tell you a story. About a man named Carl. A quiet widower in his 70s. Gentle. Soft-spoken. The kind of man who always brewed extra coffee, just in case a neighbor dropped by. Let's step into Carl's story, and see what it teaches us about reclaiming peace in the face of pain. Let me tell you about Carl. A kind, gentle man in his 70s. A widower. Soft-spoken. The kind of neighbor who always brewed a little extra coffee, just in case someone stopped by. As Carl's health declined, his son, grown, charming, and always in need, began showing up more often. At first, it looked like support. Running errands. Paying bills. Making sure Carl didn't feel alone. But soon, that help came with a price. It started small, little jabs at Carl's memory. Dad, you already told me that. Don't worry about it, I'll handle it. Then came control, subtle, then sweeping. Who could visit? How money was spent. What Carl ate, when he saw doctors, how he lived his days. All of it, slowly taken under the banner of care. Carl said nothing. For over a year, he stayed quiet. Why? Because it felt easier that way. He didn't want conflict. He didn't want to lose the relationship. But here's what Carl didn't realize. He already had. Not because he stood up for himself. But because he never did. This is what happens when we hand our power to people who misuse it. We don't just lose control, we lose ourselves. Our world shrinks. Not from age. Not from grief. But from someone else's chaos taking up space in every corner of our mind. Their moods become our weather forecast. Their presence dictates our behavior. Their approval becomes the currency we're constantly trying to earn. And in the process, we forget something vital. Our needs matter just as much as theirs. But now, I want you to picture something radically different. Imagine Carl, but this time, he stands tall. He looks his son in the eye and calmly says, "No. That's not acceptable to me." No rage. No shouting. Just the quiet confidence of someone who finally remembered that peace is not a luxury. It's a right. Now imagine the freedom of not tiptoeing around someone's emotions, of not waking up anxious about how someone else will act. Imagine knowing, truly knowing, that your life belongs to you again. That feeling, that expansion, that lightness in your chest. It's not a fantasy. It's your birthright. And reclaiming it begins with one decision. Enforce the consequence. Because boundaries aren't punishments. They're liberation. When you consistently follow through, something miraculous happens. You stop reacting. You stop rehearsing imaginary arguments in your head. You stop bracing for disrespect before it arrives. You begin to live fully, with all of your energy available to you again. Now, let's be honest, this isn't easy. When you start enforcing boundaries, guilt will show up. Like an old friend. You'll hear it whisper. Am I being too harsh? Should I just give them one more chance? But that guilt, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you've been conditioned, taught, to place everyone else's comfort above your own sanity. And now, you're unlearning that. With every boundary, with every act of self-respect, it becomes clearer. You begin to tell the difference between true compassion, and the kind of guilt that quietly sabotages your well-being. In the next and final part, we'll bring all of this together, and talk about what it really means to reclaim your life. There's one final distinction you need to understand. Revenge versus justice. Revenge is about making someone suffer. It comes from pain, from the need to strike back. But here's the thing no one tells you. Even when you win through revenge, you often walk away feeling just as empty. Justice, on the other hand, justice restores balance. Justice says, this is harmful, and I refuse to participate any longer. Justice doesn't destroy. It heals. Now, here's a truth most people never fully accept. The person who hurt you may never apologize. They may never admit what they did. They may keep going, oblivious, defiant, maybe even smug. But listen closely. Their growth is not your assignment. You are not responsible for whether they change. You are responsible for one thing only. Protecting your peace. Honoring your truth. Choosing what serves your highest good. So ask yourself the most powerful question of all. If nothing about this person or situation ever changes, what do I need to do to create peace in my own life? That answer. That's your compass. This journey isn't linear. It's not perfect. You'll stumble. You'll doubt yourself. You might fall back into old patterns. That's okay. Because each time you reassert your boundary, you strengthen your integrity. Each time you enforce a consequence, you rebuild trust with the one person who matters most. You. Let's be clear. Mercy is for the remorseful. Not for repeat offenders who treat your boundaries like suggestions or jokes. Over the course of this video, we've walked through 5 cold, unflinching truths. Why certain people absolutely deserve the consequences of their actions. From the myth of unlimited forgiveness, to patterns of manipulation, to the silent, slow erosion of your self-worth through emotional enablement. Every truth leads to this final realization. You deserve peace more than they deserve another chance. Because anyone who expects endless forgiveness without a single ounce of change, they're not sorry. They're entitled. And anyone who keeps crossing your boundaries, they're not confused. They're showing you exactly who they are. Believe them. Don't wait for another apology soaked in manipulation. Don't wait until you're too numb to feel angry. Don't wait until your self-worth has been chipped away into silence. Because the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes. Yes, setting consequences can feel uncomfortable. But do you know what's worse? Living your life edited down, muted, shrunk, just to accommodate someone else's chaos. Don't do that to yourself. If this resonated with you, if even a single line felt like truth, hit that subscribe button right now. You're not just watching a video. You're rebuilding your self-respect. Start small. But start today. And that next video waiting for you? It's not random. It's your next step toward the version of you who never apologizes for having standards.